Chocolate cake or apple pie for Christmas? I asked Mom from the grocery store. She went silent, then said, "We already did Christmas yesterday." Before I could process that, Dad took the phone. "Everything was easier without you there." I didn't argue. I just looked at the transfer papers in my purse for the $285,000 house they still expected me to give them. They had no idea what that phone call had just changed. I was standing in the bakery aisle with a chocolate cake in one hand and an apple pie in the other when I called Mom. "Chocolate cake or apple pie for Christmas?" She went quiet long enough that I checked the screen. Then she said, "Oh, we celebrated yesterday." I laughed because I thought she was joking. When I asked what she meant, she said everyone had gotten together on Christmas Eve. They ate dinner, opened gifts, and called it Christmas. "You did Christmas without me?" There was movement on the other end. Then Dad took the phone. "Everything was easier without you there." He did not yell. That made it worse. A shopping cart squeaked behind me. A little boy asked his mother for frosted cookies. Christmas music drifted from the ceiling speakers. Near the registers, a cashier called, "Merry Christmas." The whole store kept moving. I did not remind Dad how many holidays I had organized. I did not mention the wrapped gifts in my trunk. Most of all, I did not mention the house. "I understand," I said. Then I ended the call. An hour later, I stood inside a family shelter in Columbus, while a volunteer carried away the untouched chocolate cake. A little girl stared at the box and asked, "Is the whole cake really for us?" I did not know her yet. I did not know how much that question would change the way I saw the house. 3 hours later, Mom called again. "You can't give our house to strangers?" I looked at the envelope on my kitchen table. Our house? 2 months earlier, I had bought a small bungalow for about $285,000 as a retirement gift for my parents. The money came from years of savings, bonuses, and profit sharing. The title was still in my name. My attorney had prepared the gift transfer, but no deed had been delivered. Nothing had closed. Legally, my parents owned none of it. I had always been the person who fixed things before anyone else had to feel uncomfortable. Plans, reservations, forgotten gifts, family tension. I handled them. But in that grocery store, for the first time, I fixed nothing. I used to think silence meant I did not know what to say. That day, I began to understand that sometimes silence simply means you have finally heard enough. 2 weeks before Christmas, Dad made one of his usual jokes at Megan's expense. She looked down at her plate while everyone prepared to laugh it away. "Dad, that's not funny," I said. The table went quiet. Later, Mom told me, "You changed the whole mood tonight." I thought that was the end of it. Now I wondered if they had treated that moment as the reason my chair could disappear from Christmas. I still did not know they had done more than plan dinner without me. They had prepared a story to explain why I was not there. Before I understood the story, my family had prepared to explain my empty chair. I had to admit something more uncomfortable. For years, I had helped make everything easy for them. At holiday dinners, I remembered that Aunt Susan avoided pecans. I knew what time Megan got off work and which restaurants would still take a reservation. I checked whether Mom had enough serving dishes. I kept an extra gift in my trunk in case Dad forgot someone. I reminded people when dinner started, then stayed late to help clean. For Mom's birthday, I ordered flowers, made the reservation, found the cake she liked, and reminded Dad to buy a card. When 2 relatives were irritated with each other, I moved seats around. If a conversation turned sharp, I changed the subject. If something had been forgotten, I usually volunteered before anyone else had to feel awkward. The truth was, I liked doing those things. They made me feel useful. More than that, they made me feel like I belonged. I do not think my family woke up one morning and decided to treat me like a service. Things like that rarely happen in one day. One person keeps saying, "I'll take care of it." Everyone else keeps letting her. Years later, nobody remembers the work was ever a choice. The bungalow had started the same way. My parents were not homeless. They had a decent two-story house. But Dad had begun complaining about the stairs. Mom had talked for years about wanting a brighter kitchen and a smaller yard. I wanted them to grow older somewhere easier. I took them to the bungalow twice. Mom stood at the bay window. Dad pointed to a corner of the second bedroom where his reading chair would go. Watching them plan made me happy. That was why stopping the gift hurt me too. I was beginning to understand the difference between helping because I loved someone and helping because I was afraid of what would happen if I did not. After the call in the grocery store, I sat in my car without starting the engine. The chocolate cake rested on the passenger seat. Their wrapped gifts were in my trunk. The transfer envelope was inside my purse. I drove without choosing a destination. About 15 minutes later, I passed a community center with a banner outside. Christmas meal, families welcome. I turned around. I only planned to leave the cake and go home. I had no idea the little girl near the entrance was about to make me question something I had never questioned before about my own family. I carried the cake through the shelter doors, expecting to stay 5 minutes. Inside, folding tables sat beneath paper snowflakes made by children. Volunteers moved between food trays and donated coats. The room smelled like coffee, roasted meat, and industrial cleaner. A volunteer checked that the cake box was sealed before taking it. That was when I noticed the little girl watching. Is the whole cake really for us? It is. She gave me a smile. Her mother introduced herself as Marisol. The girl was Nina. Marisol had worked in payroll until her company closed. Soon after, her landlord sold the building. She lost her income when she needed a deposit and first month's rent. She had 2 job interviews after Christmas and was trying to keep Nina at school. She never asked me for money. When I mentioned transitional housing programs, Marisol asked, would talking to another program affect the case plan I already have? I don't know, but I can find out. I had confused helping with having every answer. Marisol did not need me to take responsibility for her life. She only wanted to know whether there was a legitimate door she could walk through herself. Nina said, Mom says we just need one good break. I pictured the bungalow, a stable address, a bedroom, a kitchen table, school every morning. I promised nothing. Back in my car, I emailed my attorney. Please place the gift transfer on hold. Do not proceed with any deed delivery or closing step without my written authorization. Then I left a voicemail so there would be a record of when I made the decision. It was Christmas. Nobody would act that day. After that, I called Mom. I told her I was not moving forward with the bungalow transfer for now, and that she and Dad should stop making plans based on owning it. I also said I was looking into a housing program. 3 hours later, she called back furious. You can't give our house to strangers. It was never your house, Mom, she corrected herself. I mean the house you promised us. I stayed quiet. Then she said, we thought you'd get over it. Get over what? Silence. That was when I learned Christmas had not been moved at the last minute. They had decided the weekend before that I would not be there. Because by Monday morning, I would learn that Mom had done more than hide one dinner from me. She had lied to the family, so no one would ask why I was missing. Monday morning gave me the first piece of information I could verify, without relying on anyone's memory. At just after 9, my attorney emailed. The transfer had never been completed. No deed had been delivered. The title was still entirely in my name, and my Christmas message had stopped any further steps. The legal part took less than 1 paragraph. The harder part was understanding why people I loved had begun treating something they did not own as if it had already become theirs. Aunt Susan called before lunch. She sounded uncomfortable, like someone trying to apologize for a mistake she had not known she was making. I thought you had other plans. Who told you that? Your mother. Mom had told the family I was doing my own thing for Christmas Eve. That was why Susan had not questioned my absence. I did not ask who was on my side. I asked when everyone learned the dinner had moved. I asked what Mom had said. I asked whether anyone had been told I was not invited. When you are hurt, it is tempting to search for someone who will tell you that you are right. That morning, I did not need an ally. I needed a timeline. Megan came by that evening. She was still defensive. She said she honestly thought I knew about the change. Then she added that she understood why I was upset, but the house felt like a separate issue. I did not argue about the house. Did you notice I wasn't there? She looked at me. Yes, she had noticed. Then why didn't you text me Merry Christmas? Her eyes dropped toward her hands. She had no answer. And somehow that hurt more than if everyone had agreed not to contact me. There had been no family plan to ignore me, no secret rule saying nobody should call. They simply had not thought it was necessary. Indifference can hurt more than cruelty. Cruelty at least requires someone to think about you. Indifference only requires them to believe you will still be there tomorrow. Megan sat quietly for a while. Then she remembered something. Dad had said something during dinner about the bungalow. She could not remember the exact words. Don't guess, I told her. Find it if you can. She remembered a cousin recording part of Dad's toast on a phone. For the first time, Megan stopped calling Christmas a scheduling misunderstanding. Later that night, her message appeared on my screen. There was no explanation, just a 13-second video. I did not press play. The thumbnail was enough to make my stomach tighten. Dad stood beside the Christmas tree with a glass raised in one hand. Behind him was a photograph of my bungalow. I waited until the next afternoon before opening the video. I drove to the bungalow first. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Winter light came through the bay window and stretched across the empty floor. A moment later, the furnace clicked on, filling the silence with a low mechanical hum. There were still small traces of the future my parents had imagined there. A pencil mark near the kitchen wall showed where Dad had measured for a coffee station. Mom had once stood at the bay window with a tape measure, talking about curtains. In the second bedroom, Dad had pointed toward one corner and said that was where his reading chair would go. I did not hate those memories. That was what made being there difficult. I still loved the future I had imagined for them. I just no longer knew whether I wanted to hand that future to the people I had seen more clearly since Christmas. I sat on the floor beneath the bay window and opened Megan's message. The video lasted 13 seconds. Dad stood near the Christmas tree, with a glass raised in his hand. Everyone was gathered around the table. Then he said, "Next Christmas, we'll all be celebrating at our new place." Someone said, "Cheers." Mom smiled. Megan lifted her glass. Near the tree, I could see the photograph of the bungalow Mom had brought with her. Then the video ended. I watched it again. What hurt was not that they looked happy. It was that they could celebrate what I was giving them without needing the person giving it to have a seat at the table. There is a difference between people valuing your gift and people valuing you. It had taken me years to understand that the two could exist completely apart from each other. I thought about the way Mom's language had changed. At first, she called it the house you're giving us. Later, it became our retirement place. Then she talked about where we'll put our tree. By Christmas, Dad was calling it our new place. Possession had not appeared overnight. It had grown one phrase at a time. When gratitude becomes entitlement, the giver is often the last person to notice because she still remembers when the gift began as love. I saved the video. Then I saved my attorney's email, the voicemail timestamp, and notes from my conversation with Aunt Susan. Not because I planned to sue anyone, not because I wanted to embarrass my family. I saved them because I had spent too many years letting other people explain painful moments until I started doubting my own memory. One thing was clear now. I would not complete the transfer just to prove I was not petty. Ending a gift that no longer felt like love was not revenge. My phone vibrated. Dad had sent one message. We need to talk face to face. I looked around the empty bungalow. I'm here now, I replied. About 20 minutes later, headlights moved across the bay window. Dad walked into a house he had never owned, like a man returning to a place that already belonged to him. Dad stepped inside and did not look at me first. His eyes went to the bay window, then the reading corner, then the kitchen. It felt less like a visit, and more like he was checking whether anything had changed. That told me enough. In his mind, ownership had happened before the paperwork. You're using money to punish this family, he said. Then he told me a gift should not come with conditions. I let him finish. There was never a condition. I had never asked for special treatment, gratitude, or control over the house. I had only believed my parents wanted their daughter at Christmas. Dad shook his head. Christmas and the house are two separate things. That sentence stayed with me. In his mind, I could be removed from the table while everything I provided remained. He talked about what parents do for their children, years of sacrifice and worry. Successful children, he said, naturally wanted to help the people who raised them. Then he said, I thought this was something a daughter in your position wanted to do. It was. I waited until something I wanted to give became something you believed you were owed. His face tightened. Did you talk about this house at Christmas? Instead of answering, he talked about retirement plans, furniture, the stairs at their current house. That wasn't my question. He still did not answer. I did not need him to. Then Dad said family gatherings had become exhausting around me. I questioned jokes. I talked about boundaries. I made people watch what they said. Small things became conversations about respect. I just wanted one Christmas where everyone could relax. That was when I understood. He did not want a Christmas without conflict. He wanted a Christmas without anyone pointing out the conflict. I picked up my keys. I'm not discussing the house any further today. The old version of me would have stayed until we found some kind of resolution. This time, I opened the door. I used to think a conversation ended only when both people understood each other. Now, I knew sometimes it ended because you had said enough, and the other person had heard enough. Dad stood in the living room while I stepped outside. I locked the door. Click. I watched him drive away. I did not feel victorious. I felt sad. But the bungalow was not the only thing I needed to stop giving automatically. For years, I had given my time, patience, and ability to rescue every family event. They had stopped seeing any of it as a choice. If Dad truly believed life was easier without me, I decided to let them experience exactly that. Not as revenge. I would simply stop doing the work they had never noticed I was doing. I did not cut anyone off. I did not block a number or make a list of things I would stop doing out of anger. I simply started asking one question before every request. Whose responsibility is this? Dad tested that boundary first. An appliance at their house had a warranty problem. Normally, I would find the receipt, call the manufacturer, wait on hold, and schedule the technician. This time, I sent him the customer service number. They'll ask for the serial number and purchase date. You've always handled this. I know. Then he said, I was still punishing them. I closed my laptop. The strange thing about helping too long is that people can forget you ever had the right to say no. Generosity becomes routine. Then its absence feels hostile. 2 days later, Dad had the appointment scheduled himself. They had always been capable. I had made sure they never had to prove it. Then, a furniture store called to confirm delivery of 2 recliners, a dining set, and a cabinet. The address was the bungalow. Mom and Dad had ordered everything before Christmas and paid deposits. I told the store nothing could be delivered there. The order could be canceled or redirected. Dad called immediately. "Do you have any idea how much we're going to lose on those deposits? Why did you order furniture for a house you didn't own? Because you said it was going to be ours." That was when entitlement became something I could see. A few days later, Mom invited me to lunch. Just lunch, no fighting. When I arrived, Dad, Mom, Megan, Aunt Susan, and 2 relatives were already there. Dad told them I was taking a retirement home away from my elderly parents over one Christmas dinner. Mom added that they had lost furniture deposits. One relative asked if I was giving the house to some homeless family. No family has been promised that house, and it was never my parents' house. Dad tried to interrupt. Megan spoke first. "Dad, you toasted that house at Christmas while she wasn't even invited." The room went quiet. "That's not the point." "Actually, that's exactly the point." Aunt Susan confirmed that Mom had told everyone I had other plans. Dad accused me of humiliating the family in front of outsiders. They were all relatives. That word stayed with me, humiliation. Some families fear being exposed more than they fear hurting someone. I stood. "I'm not asking anyone here to agree with me. I'm only asking you not to rewrite what happened." Then I left. If you're still listening, please tell me in the comments how satisfied you are with the story so far. It helps me know that people are walking beside me through this journey. Your presence is the greatest encouragement I have to keep telling you the final part. But what I did next with the bungalow would make Mom understand that this was no longer an argument she could wait out. I still did not know what story the bungalow would belong to next. I only knew it could not go back to being the old gift simply because everyone was uncomfortable with the consequences. So I waited. For several weeks, I let the anger cool while I researched transitional housing seriously. I wanted to know whether the idea still made sense once Christmas was no longer fresh in my mind. It did. I met with staff from a nonprofit that used single-family homes for transitional placements. Families usually stayed 9 to 12 months. They worked with case managers, kept a job or an active job search, built savings, repaired rental history, and prepared for permanent housing. Then I talked with my attorney. We went through insurance, liability, inspections, maintenance, owner access, and how a long-term use agreement would work. There were rules for ending the agreement too. The title would remain in my name. The nonprofit would operate the property. That mattered to me. I was not giving a house to some random family, no matter how my parents had described it. The program coordinator asked one question. "Is there a particular family you'd like us to consider?" No. I also declined to see the applicant files. Marisol and Nina were the reason I had started looking at the bungalow differently. But that did not make me qualified to decide who deserved it most. For most of my life, helping had meant controlling the outcome. I planned, checked, fixed, and followed up until everything was right. This time, I was learning another kind of help. Open a door, then do not assume you get to choose who walks through it. Around the same time, Mom organized another family lunch herself. She picked the date, made the reservation, and called everyone. Someone arrived late. One dietary preference was forgotten. Dad complained about the table. Then everyone ate anyway. I sat there and watched the whole thing survive without me fixing a single detail. I had never been the glue holding my family together. I had simply been the oil that kept anyone from feeling the friction. By early spring, I signed the long-term use agreement. A few days later, the coordinator told me they were beginning to screen the first family for placement. I did not ask for names. That same week, Mom called. She did not mention furniture, deposits, or the bungalow. She only said, "Can I see you alone?" Mom chose a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I was glad she did. At my parents' house, I knew where the tea bags were, which drawer held the napkins, and how quickly I would start clearing cups without thinking. A neutral table meant neither of us could hide inside old habits. Mom was already there when I arrived. Her coffee looked almost untouched. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I miss you." That hit harder than I expected. She did not say she missed my help. She did not mention the bungalow. She did not ask me to fix anything. She said she missed me. I wanted to let that be enough, but wanting comfort was not the same as having the truth. Whose idea was Christmas? Mom looked down at her cup. Dad had suggested celebrating without me. She had agreed. She knew I would be hurt. Then she admitted the part that mattered most. She was the one who told everyone I had other plans. It was easier than telling everyone we hadn't invited you. I sat with that for a few seconds. Peace that requires one person to disappear isn't peace. Mom did not argue. I used to think the person who stayed quiet while someone else did something wrong carried less responsibility, but silence has different forms. Mom had not simply stood by. She had created the story that made my empty chair easier for everyone else to accept. After a while, she asked about the bungalow, not angrily this time. She asked whether there was any chance things could go back to the way they were. I told her the agreement with the nonprofit had already been signed. The program would choose the first family through its own screening process. I would not be choosing anyone myself. Her eyes filled, but she did not raise her voice. I still felt sorry for her. That was another change in me. There had been a time when seeing someone I loved hurt by one of my boundaries made me assume the boundary was too harsh. Now I understood that pain can simply be what an old expectation feels like when it is no longer being met. When we stood to leave, Mom hugged me. I hugged her back. Nothing was fixed, but something had finally been named honestly. A few weeks later, the nonprofit coordinator called me. They had chosen the first family for the bungalow. When I heard the name, I had to sit down. The coordinator told me Marisol and Nina had been selected for the bungalow. I had not seen their application. I had not asked who else applied. I had not made a call on their behalf or tried to move them ahead of anyone else. That was exactly why the news meant so much. The program had chosen them without me controlling the outcome. Marisol called later, after giving her caseworker permission to share the result. Her voice was emotional but steady. "I need you to know I'm not asking you to carry us." "I know." That was all I needed to say. The bungalow was not a rescue. It was a bridge, a place where she could keep working, rebuild savings, keep Nina in school, and prepare for something permanent. The contrast with my parents was impossible to ignore. Mom and Dad had a home, retirement savings, and stability, yet they had called the bungalow our house before they owned any of it. Marisol actually needed housing and still understood that help was not ownership. I was beginning to understand that need does not create entitlement the way a person receives help does. Some people can be struggling and still recognize an opportunity as a gift. Others can be safe and treat an unreceived gift like property taken from them. Over the next few weeks, the bungalow was prepared. The smoke detectors were checked, the inspection was completed, basic furniture arrived, along with a small bookshelf and a kitchen table. I stood in the living room one afternoon and looked toward the corner Dad had once chosen for his reading chair. I remembered Mom measuring the windows. I remembered them talking about where the Christmas tree would go. The memories still hurt. That mattered. If I had felt nothing, I might have wondered whether anger had made the decision for me. It had not. A few months later, I attended an anniversary dinner for relatives. It was ordinary people talked about work, weather, and summer plans. Near the end, Dad asked me to step aside. "This has gone on long enough. We need to move on. Move on from what? He said Mom had apologized, Megan had apologized, everyone had adjusted. Then he said, I'm willing to let the house thing go. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. He was forgiving me for not giving him my property. That was when I asked the question I should have asked years earlier. What exactly are you apologizing for? Dad did not answer immediately. He looked toward the windows, then back at me. When he finally spoke, he said he regretted how long everything had dragged on. He regretted that Mom was unhappy, that the family felt divided, and that every gathering now seemed tense. I listened. He was apologizing for the consequences, not the choice. What exactly are you apologizing for? His face tightened. After a pause, he admitted he had not wanted me at Christmas. It had not been a misunderstanding. Mom had not acted alone. Dad wanted one evening that felt easy. According to him, I had changed. I no longer laughed off careless jokes. I asked people to think about respect. I talked about boundaries. I made everyone feel like they had to think about every sentence before they spoke. I wanted one night where everyone could relax. That was when I understood it clearly. He had not wanted a night without conflict. He had wanted a night without anyone naming the conflict. You knew it would hurt me? Yes. He did not look away. Then why did you think I'd just accept it? This time the silence lasted. Dad looked down at the table. Then he said, because you always come back. For a moment I could not answer. Birthdays came back to me. Dinners I had organized after arguments. Thanksgivings when I returned to help clean up even after someone hurt me. Late phone calls I still answered. Apologies I accepted before anyone understood what they were apologizing for. I had called that forgiveness. Dad had learned to call it permission. He had never believed I was not hurt. He had simply believed my hurt would never last long enough to cost him anything. Forgiveness doesn't mean automatic access, I said. I told him I was still his daughter. That had not changed. But I would not return to a role where my presence was optional whenever it became inconvenient, while everything I provided was expected whenever it was useful. Dad asked if that meant I no longer considered them family. I do, but family is a relationship. It is not a permanent claim on my time, money, work, or forgiveness. I put on my coat. There was no hug, no dramatic goodbye. The conversation simply ended. Megan was waiting near the entrance. She did not ask what Dad had said. She did not tell me to go back. She just opened the door. I used to think returning was proof of love. That night, I understood that sometimes love begins when you stop abandoning yourself just to stay with someone else. 1 year after that phone call in the bakery, I was holding a chocolate cake again. This time, I did not need to call anyone to ask whether I was expected. 1 year later, the bungalow no longer felt trapped between two versions of my life. Marisol had kept her job and was building savings for a permanent rental. Nina was still at the same school. She had friends, and most of her complaints were about homework and vegetables. They had not been rescued into a perfect life. They had been given enough stability to keep moving. My family had changed too. Megan asked questions instead of pretending not to notice. Mom and I spoke regularly. She had learned to ask instead of assume, and she never called the bungalow ours again. Dad and I remained distant. He no longer had the certainty that I would return whenever he expected me to. On Christmas Eve, Mom called. She had seen a non-profit post showing a wreath on the bungalow door, volunteers outside, and Christmas lights along the porch. The house looks full of life, she said. The house, not our house. After a pause, she added, I hope you're somewhere you feel wanted. I am. That Christmas, I was not boycotting my parents. I simply had other plans. The gathering was small. Marisol and Nina were there with a few friends. Megan came later after seeing Mom and Dad. Someone else cooked dinner. Someone else brought ice. Someone else set the table. My only job was dessert, so I brought a chocolate cake. Nina spotted the box. I want a corner piece. Marisol laughed. You'll get whatever piece ends up on your plate. A year earlier, Nina had asked whether the whole cake was really for them. This time, she did not ask permission to be excited. I carried the cake toward the table. Then I saw it. A plate, a folded napkin, a glass, a chair. My place had been set before I arrived. 1 year earlier, I had stood between chocolate cake and apple pie, trying to please people who had already decided they did not want me at their table. This year, I had done nothing to earn the chair in front of me. I used to confuse being needed with being loved. Being needed can make you feel important. Being wanted tells you that you can enter a room without carrying anything except yourself. I wasn't needed there. I was wanted, and I finally understood the difference. Blood can make people relatives. How they treat one another decides whether the relationship feels like family. No one should have to keep paying, fixing, organizing, or swallowing hurt just to deserve a place at the table. Sometimes boundaries do not destroy a family. They reveal how much of the old relationship depended on one person giving more than everyone else. If you had been in my place, would you have stopped giving your parents the house, or kept that promise separate from Christmas? And were you satisfied with how I handled my family in the end? Would you have gone back, or chosen clearer boundaries too? Sometimes the hardest part is believing you deserve a place where you do not have to earn the chair before you sit down.